and just being more steady and just building that core so much. And I've dropped so much weight, and I feel great, and I really do. I really feel great, and it's been fun.
Well, I use my giant ottoman to hold my pizza rolls when I'm doing my workouts. So.
That's fantastic.
I'm just joking with you, Mr. Izzo.
Well, this is going to be a fun one tonight. Our Thursday night wrestling show that we kind of just threw together during the lockdown, and it's been so fun we've just continued it. We have an interesting, panel this evening. We have, of course, my co-host, Mr. John Mosier. You might know him on the independent circuit as Mr. JM Steele. And then, of course, Dr. J. Izzo, the internet doctor himself, returns. I've been getting so much feedback from folks when you were on our Derek Stone episode.
We like to call Jay as, big sexy, too. But that's a different one.
And then tonight we have Lodi joining us. How are you, sir?
And I'm doing great. Thank you guys for having me on. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
First of all, I just the last time we had Lodi on one of my wrestling programs or any of my programs, me and Jay had a blast, and so when I hit up Jay a couple weeks ago and I said, "Hey, you think Lodi would do this again?" He goes, "Oh yeah, he's down. I don't even have to text him. He's down." And then he texted me a little bit later and he's like, "Told you, he's down." So, one question I have that I've always wondered. You guys in pro wrestling are essentially trained stuntmen. Why don't you guys get more work in Hollywood? Because you can make stuff look real, because 90% of the time it is.
Right, that's a good question. Some of the guys that made that crossover and done actual movie roles. I moved to California myself back in '99. I was out there for about 9-10 months. I was doing some auditioning for roles or whatever. But the biggest thing my manager and agent told me at the time was I was just way too big. If you're doing a stuntman role for someone who weighs 240 or 250 pounds, it works. But you can't really be a stuntman for a leading actor who weighs 150 pounds. So that was one of the biggest things. They said, if you take this seriously, once you stop wrestling, you're going to have to drop some weight. And if you remember when The Rock started doing movies, he lost a lot of weight for a while.
Yes.
I came in, back down to 220, 230, and around that range, and he slowly started putting the weight back on. He's right now, he can look the way he wants to look and do the roles he wants to do. So I think that's part of it, actually. But the whole stuntman thing is, you are absolutely correct. Some of the things I've done in a wrestling match or a wrestling event, I never learned in wrestling school. It's like, how do we come up with that and why did we do it? But we ended up doing it anyway.
It's amazing. Now, Jay, how long have you known Lodi?
We go way back. I think it's back to about 20. It's almost 20 years. I think it was around 2000.
It's got to be, because I left Atlanta. I left Raleigh to move back to Atlanta in 2001. I'm thinking we met early 99 or late 99. And then, 99, 2000-ish, right around in there. So, 20 years.
Yeah, 20.
Wow.
Yeah,
he's old.
Yeah, listen. I remember this true story. This is a true Lodi story. So, Lodi and I, we're looking at houses in Raleigh, and we decide that we're going to stop because Lodi's hungry. Lodi has to eat like every couple of hours. Okay, so we stop. I can't remember. It was like an Applebee's or something like that, right? So Lodi orders the grilled chicken sandwich, and immediately strips the bun and literally puts it off to the side, and he just starts, and he orders an extra chicken breast to go with it, by the way. And and I'm sitting there, I'm looking at him going, holy crap, the guy's not even going to eat the bun. And there was a part of me at that point that went, do you ask the guy, are you going to eat that? And then should you? Because at that time I was like, pretty close to a biscuit away from 300 about that time, probably. I was probably in my 20s. And so he ate so clean every time we would go out to eat, because we were looking at a lot of houses, and at that time we didn't have the internet the way we did now. And we would eat frequently, and I would just watch how clean he would eat. I would just go,
oh yeah.
I would just sit there and I just admire him, going, look at that discipline. That's amazing. It was awesome. It was awesome. And he could not have been nicer. By the way, let me just tell you something. At that time, it was hard. Doing houses was hard, and he could not have been more patient and nicer in that whole experience. He was great from the first day I met him to 20 years later. He's just been great. He's been also, by the way, he's not only a great guy, he really is. He's a great guy. He's a great wrestler. I watched him wrestle. He's a great wrestler. But he's a great dad. I'm just going to tell you something. He is a great dad. I'm just telling you. His daughter adores him, and you get so jealous you want to be one of his kids. I'm just telling you.
She's loving my life, and she's in her bedroom now laughing, listening to me do this. So,
of course, Miss O is. That's what Miss O does. She laughs.
I don't know. The week before she came down for the summer, Jay, I did a podcast and video interview with a guy in Australia. I posted it a couple of days ago. We started at 11 o'clock on a Sunday, our time, for the time difference. We went 3 hours.
Wow.
I looked at the clock, 1:56. And when we finished it, he took that and they cut it down to 2:30, but put some video with it. When I talked about someone, they put their picture up. So they did a really good job with it. But one of my closest friends who loves wrestling, loves podcasts, went out to do cardio and listened to it the other day. And I've known this guy since college. And Big Mike texts me and he goes, man, I'm 30 minutes into your interview and I'm so proud of you because you sound worldly, you sound professional, you sound articulate, nothing like you are in person. You know, your best friend can play with that. So I come home and I tell my daughter, and she laughs, and she's like, yeah, Dad, there's three of you. There's Dad, there's Brad, and there's Lodi. And she said, you're driving me around in the car, you're Dad. We stop at Chick-fil-A to make an order, you're Brad, and you get a phone call from a promoter, and you go to Lodi. So I bounce back and forth with three, I guess, in her eyes anyway.
Let me ask you a professional question. Right now, with all the COVID stuff, talk to us what's different now in the wrestling world for you, or maybe in general, what you know in the wrestling world. How have things changed? What's going on in the wrestling world? Help the listener understand that.
Yes, sir. I will tell you, for an independent wrestler like me, I wrestle almost every weekend, sometimes twice a weekend. So I call myself semi-retired because when you work on TV, you work a whole lot more days. Early March, when the shutdown started, I lost between then and now 17 bookings because I stay booked about 2 to 3 months in advance. And while that's kind of hard to register, that's a good chunk of change for me that I just can't make back up. You know, if the show's canceled, they may have another show somewhere down the line when things clear out. But, you know, you're used to that money coming in. I'm not going to lie. That's a kick in the teeth between, you know, your payday and then we sell so much with our merchandise now. Because the economy's been so good. How wrestling, obviously, you guys watch it and fans watch it, has changed with the WWE and AEW doing the show with no fans or just having some of the wrestlers there, you know, sitting in the stands. And, you know, we were supposed to have done a show last weekend in Charleston that got canceled at the last minute. We really thought that was going to happen, and that one got canceled. And as of right now, I don't have another show on the books until August 22nd.
Wow.
And I'm really thinking there probably will not be another show in North Carolina this year. I think it's going to be a push to do it. The big show we do in the fall, WrestleCade up in Winston-Salem, where they bring in all these guys in. It's a 3-day event. They've already canceled it. Not happening. Just too much to plan with what's going on. So, yeah, it's had a tremendous effect on everyone. You know, talking about working out in our gym, we're not allowed to be open yet, although I've got some trusty clients, my personal training studio, that still want to work out, and they've taken care of that. And I've got them coming in, but obviously no new clients. And about half of my clients kind of rule followers and staying home waiting for the okay for the governor. So it's been a real kick for us financially and the time-wise, but I'm in a boat with a lot of people. I know it's not just me.
So
wow.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I totally understand my niece. She's a personal trainer. She works at the facility hooked onto Cowboy Stadium, and she's having the exact same problems down there. They opened it up some, but people are just kind of scared to get out.
Right. I mean, we're going through the strictest training, the cleaning protocols that I can. I have a personal training gym, so I'm never training more than 1 or 2 people at a time. We wipe everything down. Everybody, washes their hand when they comes in, all that good stuff on the way out, and they help me wipe everything down in between clients. But again, until we get the okay to be legally open again, it's going to be tough to get back some of our rule-following clients. I totally get it. Why they don't want to come in. Some of them have, some extenuating circumstances. They're older, maybe high blood pressure.
Oh,
Uh-oh.
oh, what happened?
I don't know.
Cute drop, maybe.
I don't know. Something happened.
Well, he's still there or something. It's just
he's
not.
Still there.
It's showing he's here.
I could see John's.
Yeah.
Your video went
There
by.
he
Oh,
is.
There we
Lodi's
are.
back.
There we go.
Oh, it's
Good.
Lodi
We
just
got
had
the
to
big
get
star
something to
back.
drink. That's all it was. Lodi just had to get something to drink, man. That was.
You don't want that time with everything.
They shut me down. They're like, talks too much. Cut him off.
No,
So-
you're great.
We,
Nope.
who was
Sorry,
the wrestler, who was the wrestler that we had a couple weeks ago that we interviewed? What was his name?
Derek
Derek
Stone.
Derek Stone, right? And when we interviewed Derek, one of the things, I found interesting because he's been in this business a long time too. I mean, and he's a graybeard for sure, doing this business. But one of the things I found interesting is he talked about how the industry has changed a great deal from the time he first got into it way back in the day to what it is now in terms of the new breed of people getting into it. Talk to us, because you've been in this business a long time. What have you seen as the difference in how people get in this industry? Because it's quicker. It seems like it's much quicker today for kids to get into the industry than it was for you guys who had to work so hard to break it.
This November will be 25 years for me that I've been in the wrestling business since I took my first bump in wrestling school. And one thing that's different now as far as getting into the wrestling business, I've told this story time, and I may have shared it with you before, but my original trainer trained people on Tuesday and Thursday nights. It was about an hour and a half drive each way to get there. And I came to a Tuesday, Thursday practice, so I was 4 practices into my wrestling career. And I came back the 5th night, and my trainer was in the ring. He looks over at me, and it was C.W. Anderson, who wrestled at ECW. And CW looks over at me, and he goes, "Hey, you're going to keep coming back, aren't you?" Kind of thought for a second it was a trick question. I said, "Well, yeah, I'm here to learn how to wrestle." He said, "Okay." Tonight we started learning how to wrestle. And I'm like, "Hold on a second. I've been coming. This is my 5th time. What do we do the other 4?" And he legit looked at me and said, "I've just been punching you and kicking you to see if you'd quit." My first 4 nights of wrestling school, basically, I got beat up and didn't know any better because I didn't know the business. So, it's one of those crazy. I was so shocked, and I'm like, "Wait a minute, that's how you get in these days?" He goes, "Yeah, we thought we'd run you out because you got a good body and a good build, but we don't know that you have what it takes." And so, just to get into a small wrestling school at that time, that was the kind of thing. We don't do that anymore, obviously. The business is a little kinder and gentler to people breaking in, so that's changed. I think WWE has done an even better job of taking wrestling mainstream, especially with the signing the deal with Fox, and so many guys have crossed over into movies and TV shows.
Yeah.
Even though the numbers don't portray that on Monday night and Wednesday nights, the numbers aren't there like they were in the late 90s during the Monday Night Wars for sure. But the business as a whole has changed too with the style the guys work. I grew up watching Mid-Atlantic Wrestling where you had guys, like Ric Flair and the Road Warriors and Nikita Koloff and Dusty Rhodes and all these larger-than-life, not only personas, but the Road Warriors and the Warlord and Nikita, those guys were monsters. I mean, they were just up from a whole other planet. They're big, they're muscular, and today, a lot of the wrestlers are smaller. Athleticism that I could never dream of having or doing some of the things those cats do. Even in my prime, I couldn't pull off some of the moves they've done or do. So the athleticism is different than when I started. But I think one thing it's lacking to a degree is the personalities. Guys getting themselves over as opposed to just being a cookie cutter method of everybody else, looking the same, doing some of the same moves, talking the exact same because everybody's scripted by the same writers.
Yep.
And so that to me, everybody's like, "Oh, you're an old timer and you're bitter." I'm not bitter, and I still enjoy watching wrestling because I love wrestling. I always have and I always will. It's just different than what I grew up on. It's different than what I enjoy truly. I use a Burger King theory with all the kids in my wrestling school. Everybody says, Lodi, what's a Burger King theory? No fan wants to pay their hard-earned money to watch a guy in the ring that could either be behind the counter at Burger King, because that's what he looks like, or standing in line beside him at Burger King ordering food. Nobody wants that guy. You want to pay for larger than life, something that is a circus, or something that blows your mind. And I feel like we've got, and I'm not knocking any one person in particular, but there's a lot of soccer playing video game guys who are 5'6", 5'7", 5'8", that they just don't appear tough to me, much less able to really fight. And that's something that comes with the portrayal of professional wrestling. Is I like to think it's two tough guys, two great guys that if they weren't in the ring and you ran them to a dark alley, that guy's definitely going to kick your butt. No questions asked. So that's some of the changes that I think I've seen. I don't hate the new product. It's just different.
Do you think the old style, like when Ring of Honor started to come into prominence, started that? Because they were a bunch of smaller guys, did a lot of flips, they were all over the place. And I think the only thing that I didn't like there was they would take somebody's like deathly finisher that would have like put somebody out for 3 weeks back in the day, and they'd kick out. You know, you've got a guy doing a spike pile driver and he jumps right back up. It's like you don't give people a chance to suspend, you know, the belief factor.
Right. And you're absolutely right. That somewhere along the way it became fun to kick out of everybody's finish 2 or 3 times in a match to try to fool the fans, but then you lose on a schoolboy. The psychology behind that, to me, just doesn't make sense. And I think the fans like that back in the 80s and 90s. If a guy hits you with his finisher, it's over.
Oh, yeah. You spent the whole match setting it up, too, you know?
You go for it, the guy gets away from you. Like, my finish is a DDT. I'll hook it early, the guy will squirt out and slide out and powder and, you know, get out of the ring and that kind of thing. So you're putting that thought in the fans' mind that when they see Lodi hit a DDT, nobody's kicking out. That's over. You're going home, done. And
I'm gonna throw a curveball here at you for a second, because I think you embodied all of the great stuff. I know I'm probably the only person that watched it in this area, but I mean, I used to catch all that NWA Carolina stuff you were involved with. My God, you guys were great. I loved it. It gave me the old school feel. You had a little bit of a new school flair, but you had the stuff that, you know, made me a big fan back in the day, and I loved it.
That NWA Charlotte thing was such lightning in a bottle. We had something we had no idea it was going to turn into something that good. It lasted for 2.5, 3 months, but the guys we brought in, and it's funny story, when that company started, they got in touch with some of my friends and booked them to wrestle, and they got in touch with me, and I'm like, all right, they're going to use me too. I was waiting for the call. And the promoters took me to lunch one day, and they're like, you know, we've got some thoughts about using you with our new company. You know, what do you think? I'm like, great. What do you want me to do? He said, well, you know, you're getting kind of old. This was 9, okay? This was 11 years ago. And they asked me, like, you know, you're a great talker. Would you be willing to be our, you know, sit in the booth and announce the matches for us with another guy? You know, and maybe we'll turn you into like Jerry the King Lawler, where you get a shot here or there to wrestle. And we talk about a kick to my ego. You know, I'm like, you guys are using all my friends, but you're going to make me talk. And we turned that thing into, I actually worked one night as a stand-in for Raven, was a storyline. And the fans, thank goodness for those NWA Charlotte fans, reacted so positively to my Lodi character. The promoters are like, okay, that's it. You're still calling the matches, but you're wrestling every night. So
I loved it. It was awesome.
Did you make some of those shows?
No, I watched them online because you guys put them on YouTube. I mean, I would catch anything and everything I could. And actually, because I've seen it, I think one of those like next video or something, and I see a picture, he was like, okay, let's check this out like that. And I was just like, oh, wow. And I mean, I understand getting stuck in the booth with the stiff. I had that happen in Kansas. And I mean, oh, sorry, Jiggy. I'm just kidding, man. You're in a stiff. But yeah, you guys had a good product there. I loved it. And then it was gone. But I mean, what you guys did was impressive.
Yeah. You know, we had so many guys that came through there, and I'm going to brag a little bit. The guys, the owners, used me as one of the bookers, and they let me bring in some talent, because there was a lot of talent in the Carolinas at that time that weren't charging a lot of money. They were indie workers. They hadn't been on TV before, but So you guys know FTR at AEW. They were the rival WWE. Cash Wheeler now. Daniel Wheeler is his real name. I've known him since he was 17. You know, he worked there. You've got Jackson Riker, who was Gunner at TNA.
Yeah.
He was
Bill
there.
Shatter.
We had Ryan from Ascension. He was there. And we did such a good job, I think, of bringing in. We had an old school match every night where we might bring in Abdullah Butcher and a guy. And so it was kind of cool the way they did. We brought Ivan Koloff one night. So we mixed a lot of different things. And I'm stealing this from my buddy Raven, but he says, if I'm in charge of a wrestling show or the wrestling show I want to watch, don't give me 6 matches of 300-pound guys. Don't give me 6 matches of flippity flops. Don't give me 6 matches of hardcore. Don't give me 6 midget matches. Give me a little bit of everything. You know, put something there and I think that was part of what NWA Charlotte did. We had a little something for all the wrestling fans, I think.
Yeah.
If you guys haven't seen it, go onto YouTube and find it. It was really good. I never knew you were that good of a talker. I mean, you were really good. I was like, wow. I was like, because I mean, some people didn't know that. I mean, you always had the really good look. You're always like just ripped. You know, you were great in the ring like that. But I don't think they like in the days of WCW, you didn't get to talk as much. And oh my God, you were great on the mic, dude.
Yeah, thank you very much. And that's something I've worked hard at. It's just it doesn't always come naturally to a lot of guys, but thank you for saying that. And one of the greatest things that came out of NWA Charlotte, the first match ever between Lodi and Raven took place at NWA Charlotte.
Wow.
And that's one I'm very proud of. And when you used the stuntman comment earlier,
Yep.
This set that they had for NWA Charlotte, where the entranceway was a 2-story set. It was huge. One of the nicest things I've ever seen in wrestling that wasn't on TV. And they had one area at the end of this 2-story set that had what they call a crow's nest, a little stand up top. And Raven and I talked about, he said, man, it might be pretty cool if we went up to the crow's nest and I throw you off.
Jeez.
2 stories is not a short fall. It's up in the air. And so Raven and I were going back and forth about it, and he said, maybe I'll hook you in a sleeper and we'll both go together. And I'm like, so boss, what are we gonna do? He goes, we'll decide when we get up there. Of course, the way it match up, it was a Clockwork Orange House of Fun, so we're both covered in blood, like bleeding like stuck pigs. We get up there and he throws me into the sleeper. I'm like, are we going or are you just throwing me? And he goes, how about 1, 2, 3? 2, 3. And we both went. But Raven was really smart about this. He smarted up the security guys earlier. So all the security guys were down below us. And they were also indie wrestlers. So they're down underneath us going, don't jump. Don't throw him off. Don't do it. So we landed on them to break our fall zone. So we had a little bit of cushion down there.
But you still fell 2 stories.
That's the thing.
Yeah, but I mean, the guys on the ground felt the impact of it,
The worst thing about that is if you go back and watch the video in slow motion, Raven jumps off straight up and down, almost lands on his feet as the guy catches him. I went off more to angle, and nobody really broke my fall. I actually landed on my hip. But
wow.
It doesn't hurt so much when it happens. It's the next day.
Yeah.
The adrenaline wears off and everything from it. I can imagine.
Yeah, it's the next day.
So how'd you guys? Sorry.
No, go ahead,
I got
John.
one more question. I'll let you have, Mr. J.
Go ahead, John.
But who was it that came up with the idea for the West Hollywood Blondes? That was pure genius. And if they got that together about a year ahead, I think WCW might be in business because you guys were good.
You know what? I will throw a stat at you or some figures that absolutely mirror and support what you just said. Back in the late 90s, the wrestling shows in the dirt sheets, they broke down the quarter-hour segments so you knew how many people were watching you. And Nitro had started falling off a little bit by the time we went to the West Hollywood Blondes, but we never had a quarter-hour segment under 4.5, where Hogan and Bischoff were bringing like 1.9s. So
yeah, you two were entertaining as all could get out. I mean, it was fun.
And speaking of lightning in a bottle, here after the flop disbanded and broke up, I was more or less on my own as a standalone character. And didn't have a lot going on. I was doing the Tuesday night shows, which aired the show on Saturday. I'll do Nitro here and there. And Lenny Lane, who I didn't know very well, just seemed to show, hey, Lenny, hey, Lodi. He came up to me one day and he's like, hey, what's the company doing with you right now? And I'm like, they really don't have a lot for me. I'm just doing the Saturday night show. And he goes, why don't we form a tag team? Lenny's idea. My response was, because he was strictly an enhancement guy, just to make the other guys look good. I said, Lenny, what are we going to be, though? Lodi and Lenny, the losers? I mean, it's not like we win a lot of matches. That's not a good premise to take two enhancement guys almost to put together. And so he said, no, what we'll do is, basically he based our characters off of the Saturday Night Live and ambiguously gay duo. Where they,
Ace and Gary.
He said, here's my plan. They'll shoot a video of us walking down the beach. We're both eating ice cream, and yours drops. And I'm like, hey, Lodi, have some of my ice cream. So that's where the whole thing started. I told Lenny, I didn't think he was serious. I said, Lenny, if you're serious, buddy, just do me a favor. Type it all out, because at the time, Kevin Nash was the booker of WCW, and he and I were pretty close to the point where I could ask him for a favor or at least run an idea by him. And so I didn't think Lenny would take the time to type up this whole thing. But 2 weeks later, lo and behold, he shows up at TV and gives me a 3-page rundown of what he wants this angle to be. The first line said, this is not a gay gimmick. I said, okay, let's go turn this into Kevin. We get down to Kevin's office, and I hand it to him, and he looks at it, he goes, this is not a gay gimmick. He throws it back at us. So we can't do this here. And I said, Lenny said, look through it and see what you think. Because the storyline was going to be as it was. We came out to be brothers. That's why we were so affectionate with each other or whatever. So it was totally Lenny's idea. Lenny put it together. And about 4 months later, after I turned it into Kevin, I got a phone call from a good friend of mine who was the editor of the magazine. He said, hey, don't say anything. Don't tell him but about 15 minutes, Kevin Nash is going to call you to come to Nitro on Monday, and they're going to run with that Lenny and Lodi angle. And so that's how it started. So I have to give Lenny all the credit for it. And again, there are certain people you get in the ring with to wrestle or wrestle with as a tag team partner, and you guys just work. Lenny and I, to not know each other, everybody talks about our chemistry and the way we came across. So much of that was truly ad-lib that we did in the ring. It's just we fed off of each other, and then we ended up being obviously a tag team. So we get rental cars together. We stay at the same hotel room. We work out at the same gyms. And we truly, for that whole time, there was nobody in my life closer to me than him, because we were practically together every day of the week and had a great relationship outside of the ring. And I think that played off inside the ring as well. So fun gimmick, a fun time in life. Our like I said, our quarter-hour ratings were great. And I thought it was very entertaining myself. I just couldn't take it a little longer.
You guys in 3 count were the 2 best bits on that whole show lots of times.
Yeah, towards the end especially.
So you recently, I saw on Instagram that Lenny and you got back together recently, and talk about that a little bit.
Oh, man. So Lenny and I had done an autograph signing maybe 3 to 4 years ago together at one of these Legends events, but Lenny and I have not wrestled together since 2006. And the guys from WrestleCade up in Winston-Salem, the owner of AML, a wrestling group here in North Carolina, wanted to bring us in. And so I talked to Lenny, buzzed him, because he didn't want to do a whole lot of wrestling. He goes, man, you know what? I'll do it. He said, what do you want? I said, should we get new gear made? I still have my old Lenny and Lodi trunks, some of them. And he said, how about we make them shorter than what we had before? And he sent me a picture with him wearing our old biker shorts. Lenny's my age. He's 49. And go back to Jay saying, I eat clean back then. As I've gotten older, Jay, I eat even better now, to be honest with you. It's just to maintain the way I want to look, I have to do it.
Right.
So Lenny shoots me a picture over of him in our old trunks, and I look at him, I'm like, ooh, he has not been eating clean. And I was actually a little put off by it, because we had a chance. We were talking to some of the guys at Impact and about getting back on, doing some stuff together. And I, as polite as I could, I'm like, Lenny, for a 49-year-old dude, man, your body looks great. For a professional wrestler, you're a little off. And he was kind enough to say, Lodi, you're right. Would you please help me with my diet and my training? So I worked with him on his diet for about 8 to 10 weeks, and he came into that show, which was WrestleCade, like I said, up in Winston-Salem last November. He looked like $1 million. He really took my advice and listened, and I'm so proud of him. And we talked last week, as a matter of fact. So we're still close. And that show, they did a great deal for us. We were in a 30-man battle royal where everybody came out to the same generic music. And you had, Sandman and I think Shane Douglas was there. Almost everybody that's not on contract events is there. And they allowed Lenny and I to be the last two to come to the Battle Royal, and they gave us our entrance music and let's do our whole big thing. So that was pretty cool, man. It was a good experience. And being back with Lenny, he said it the first night we stayed together in the room. He's like, man, we hadn't been together in a long time, but kind of seems like it was yesterday. It just feels natural. And so we had a lot of fun, man. That was a great time in my life working with him. And I consider him a great friend.
That's awesome.
When you first came up 25 years ago, when I first started watching wrestling when I was a kid, I'm about 7 years older than you are. But when I was first watching, Vern Gagne was at the end of his career, and Nick Bockwinkel was, and Bobby Heenan were really coming to their own at that time. And of course, we were starting to get players like, Nick. Ray the Crippler Stevens and of course Ivan Putski and these were characters, and of course we had in the Nebraska area we had the Claw, who that was his, which by the way the guy was like a doctor of like I think it was philosophy or something like that, right? And he would come out like an idiot, and he had the Claw, and it was the characters. The characters seem to make, for me growing up and watching wrestling, those characters made the show.
Right.
The characters made wrestling for me. I feel like today there's just not those strong characters in wrestling. Speak to what's changed in that piece of it that you've noticed, in the course of your 25-year career. Because you started right at the edge where those characters, some of these characters were hot,
right?
Yeah.
During this time, but it seemed like the characters started fading a little bit over the course of time. Talk about that transition a little bit.
I think we touched on it briefly earlier when you've got so many of the guys having their promos dictated to them by the same writers.
Yeah.
You end up sounding like a carbon copy of the guy who spoke 15 minutes earlier. And a quick note to go with that, I have a client in my personal training studio, has never watched wrestling. Just never had been his thing. He's older, he's 63, 64, but was on a business trip and flipping through the channels, and he saw SmackDown or Raw, one or the other. He said, I'm going to watch this a little bit, so now I know Lodi and see what he's talking about. The guy was talking, blah, 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 whatever. He said, I got kind of bored with it, so I turned the TV. I turned it back 30 minutes later. It was a different guy. But whoever that guy was, he sounded just like the first guy.
Yes.
And so when you don't give the guys the freedom to come out, be a character, and be what they feel on the inside, at the very end of WCW, they started trying to script our promos. And one of the biggest blow-ups I ever had in wrestling with The Office was I had a guy that they had just hired walk up to me and hand me a script for what he wanted me to say on TV. And Jay, it was nothing that my character would have ever said, not even close. It was so out of character for me. And so you've got a guy writing who may not get what the character is, or the guy may not know what his character is and just goes with bad writing. But I think that's part of it. Just like they've taken the creativity out of it. And probably one of the reasons I love doing indie shows now, because with my time in the business, I can go out and be Lodi. Nobody's going to tell me, hey, will you read this script or will you say this? I just get to be Lodi and, not deal with any politics and wrestle and entertain people, which is great for me. And the best thing, Jay, I've got to talk about this, is I truly use my wrestling now as a platform for my ministry.
Sure.
And, all of our shirts and pictures and stuff, have our Bible verses on it. But, nobody just dictates, what I'm going to say. And so that freedom to entertain people and spread the gospel and do what I love at 49 and a half years of age, or 3/4, whatever. I got 2 months before 50. So damn, I'm catching you.
So yeah, I think one of the things though, and I should have been a little more clear, is that there were gimmicks, right? There was some great gimmicks.
Yeah.
There were you knew the gimmick. I mean, Ric Flair was always going to be the nature boy and came out with his gimmick, and he would have the fur coat on and he would do his thing, and you knew what, Ray the Crippler Stevens was going to do. There was these different gimmicks that were out. I just don't see the gimmicks that that made it fun. It made it fun for me as a fan, as a young fan. I loved those gimmicks. Is it just passe? Is it too old school? Or are we just not? Are we past that? What's changed in that?
I think one of the things that may have changed that to a degree when WWE was still doing pay-per-views every month that you had to buy before they had the network. And so I think they felt like with the pay-per-view buys, they were losing to UFC. And they wanted to go to more of a realistic-based program where it's about just two guys fighting or competing. And another analogy I always use in my school is, how many of you guys have sat down and watched Saturday after Saturday of collegiate wrestlers? The ratings on a collegiate wrestling tournament is not very high.
No.
Because it's just they're great athletes doing great wrestling moves, but it's not entertaining because you just got two guys fighting for, a gold medal or the first place. Whereas with the gimmicks and the characters, you knew somebody had done something wrong to the other guy and he was going to get him back or whatever. And there was some more, I think, more depth to it. And the other thing, I think what we call shotgun booking, instead of taking a angle and letting it play out over 6 or 8 or 10 months time, they make 3 angle changes in the same show.
Yes.
You two guys first of the show who bump into each other backstage, and the guy's like, "Hey, you want to fight? I'll fight you." And they go out to fight, and then somebody comes out and puts him in a tag team against 2 other guys, and they win the tag team belts that night. And by the end of the night, they broke up again. I mean, it's just stuff that when we were kids, Jay, I think they really let that slow boil of an angle play out, where now you've got guys who don't have the characters or have the gimmicks, and the booking is so shotgun booking. What can I do right now tonight to maybe pop the ratings or get people to talk, as opposed to just stretching that thing out and building up the anticipation. Yep. As a fan, like, okay, these two guys are tag team. They've been a tag team forever. They're not getting along. They're going to get in a fight one day. And stretching that out and just kind of spoon feeding it to the fans, I think allows you to get more invested, as a point to where you got a guy who starts not beginning of the night he's a baby face, by the end of the night he's a heel.
Yep.
You got flip-flopping and don't have some kind of set character for a set amount of time. It may be enjoyable to watch, but I don't know that it necessarily pulls you in like good entertainment, like a movie would, or a mini series, or maybe something on Netflix that's 10 shows long, like Ozark. I think everybody I've talked to, I don't know that I've found many people who don't like Ozark, and it kind of hooks you. You want to see what happens next, and we're missing a lot of that in wrestling. It's somewhat predictable.
I think part of the problem is that they're assigned characters, especially in like WWE and stuff. They don't develop it. Like, Jay, back when you were talking, you had to sit there and try different characters to get it so you could hit and draw money. Because like in the days, if you weren't doing good up at where you lived, like in Omaha, the area coming through there, or the AWA, you could go to Memphis and see if you could get over there. It's like Steve Olsanowski, he was an enhancement talent up in the AWA. He goes down to Georgia. Becomes a huge hit. He's national champion, featured prominently as a headliner and stuff. Leaves Georgia, goes back to Minnesota for the AWA. He's back down to being an enhancement guy.
Yeah.
And stuff. It was just, you were allowed to go around. Like, if Ray Stevens didn't get over in, Texas, he could go to Georgia and see if it worked. And then you would get there. But a lot of the guys, they allowed them a little more freedom. Like, Lodi, would you sit there, who would you say was the better allowing you guys to do the stuff? Bischoff, Ferrara, Russo, or who is your favorite to work with or work under?
Being basically a mid-card guy and working with Raven, who never really got to break that glass ceiling of being more, the top 12 we had at WCW, we called the Dirty Dozen. Hard to break that ceiling and get into that main event level. But so Bischoff did most of the booking, worked with the upper guys. He didn't really deal with the lower mid-card guys. And probably my favorite 2 bookers to work for that I dealt with personally was Terry Taylor and Kevin Sullivan. who they when I was at WCW, they were in and out, but at one time or another, multiple times at WCW, I worked for Kevin, and Terry had left and came back one time and worked with Terry. But those guys had great minds for the business. I worked a lot for a group down in Georgia called Universal Championship Wrestling. And so they brought Sullivan in for a while last year to book a pay-per-view and book some other stuff. And he was just, he's a big old meathead from years gone by. And he's like, Lodi, you look great. How much do you weigh now? And, man, we want to keep you in the ring as much as possible tonight because I want your good looks to get over. And, but he's got a great mind for the business and learning from those guys and them trusting me at this point. So Sullivan, they bring him in to be this booker, and he goes, Lodi, go put the match together and tell me what you want to do. Well, that was his job, right? But he asked me to do it for him when I came back and ran it by him. Okay, Kevin, I want to do this. This is our tag match. What do you think? And he said, I love it. Go do it. And so when you got somebody like that you respect and he respects what you put together now, that's a pretty good feeling. So, but Kevin Sullivan and Terry Taylor were probably two of my favorites to work under.
Question for you. Did you watch the Ric Flair ESPN that they did on it was like a 30 for 30 or something like that? Did you watch that? What was your when you watched it, what was your reaction to what you saw that as they portrayed out Rick and as Rick talked about what he went through during his time? Right.
I think when ESPN put something together, if they did a 30 for 30 on watching paint dry, they could make it entertaining. They're great with those things.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I'm not kidding. Something will come up like, the SMU football team, and I'm like, and 10 minutes into it, I can't stop watching. I know Rick. I worked with him at WC. I grew up as a huge Ric Flair fan, and if you're in the Carolinas, I think that was a prerequisite.
Yeah.
But working with him at WCW and working with his oldest child, David, when they put David Flair on TV, Lenny and I did some stuff with him and helped him off air to, get better because they thought it would be a fun gimmick to throw a guy on TV who had never been trained to wrestle. And if you want to see something bad on TV, a bad wrestler makes everything look terrible. In their mind, they thought throwing him out there without training him, fans would be like, oh, he just got a job because of his dad. They really hate him. But he had what we call in wrestling, change the channel heat.
Yes. Yes. I have heard on many occasions that Jeff Jarrett had changed the channel heat.
Yeah, I could go with that. I could go with that too. And so that's the wrong kind of heat. You don't want to people. You want people, if you're a heel, obviously to dislike you, but also want to see you so they can dislike you, not just where they hate you because you're not a good wrestler. And then I was Ashley, Rick's daughter, obviously Charlotte. I was her first trainer. She came to me and worked with me about 3 months before she went down to WWE. And then Reed, the youngest, Reed worked out a lot with me, and I traveled with Reed and took Reed on the road with me. And so through those guys and Rick, I knew him pretty well. And I think Hunter in that show summed it up the best. Rick embellishes at times. We know that. Yep. That's just Rick.
That's just Rick.
But do you remember what Hunter said when they said, how do you know if he's lying? And Hunter's like, his mouth's moving. It's probably not the truth. So I think somebody broke down. He talked about how many women he had, been out with, et cetera. And the number was so astronomical, it would be, almost next to impossible to pull that off in an 80 or 90-year-old life, much less when, Rick was 60. But, yeah, I again, it was well done. And anytime wrestling gets some recognition outside of the normal wrestling show that's not just super negative, obviously, I think it's a good thing because, a lot of my clients watch it and they had questions. And so I thought that was an entertaining show, actually.
Who was okay, so this is one of those questions. Favorite person to wrestle when you were in the ring and the person that you struggled with the most in the ring?
That is a great question. You have good chemistry with some guys that you just can't predict that we're going to get in there and be good dance partners. I never had a bad match with Kidman. Billy Kidman from the Flock. After we broke up, I wrestled with him. I wrestled him several times, and he was so great. It's hard to have a bad match with him. the best I've ever been in the ring with by far, hands down, and we can discuss it or we can just put a lid on it. Was Chris Benoit.
What made it so great? What was he so great?
Chris Benoit was the most professional wrestler I was ever in the ring with. He was so good. And you can't watch him and think when he's kicking a guy or he's forearming a guy, you look at that, he was so vicious with his moves as far as the way he carried himself, the way he executed them. You could never look at his work, I don't think, and be like, oh, that looked kind of light, or oh, that looked soft. But the key to that is anybody can punch somebody in the face. That doesn't take skill.
Yeah.
But if I punch you in the face but don't touch you and everybody thinks I punched you in the face, that's the skill of what we do. and Raven had taught me this early before I had my first match with Benoit. He's like, be careful when you're selling. If you're down on all fours and Benoit kicks you, if you don't see him kick you, there's a good chance you may not sell his move. And there's nothing worse in a wrestling match on TV to work with a veteran and they do something to you and you don't sell it. So you obviously got to, because he's so light. If I'm looking this way and he boots me in the shoulder, I'm probably not going to feel it. The only thing Benoit to me did that was vicious as far as wrestling goes, and this is something that we joke about in class, if you can't take it, you're probably in the wrong business. But Benoit's chops, when he would chop you, they were legit.
Oh, yeah.
The first night I worked with him, I think he chopped me 6 or 7 times, and I had 6 or 7 open, like razor blade cuts on my chest. And I chopped pretty hard myself. And so that's something I picked up from him. And I enjoy doing that. And, fans eat it up. But that was the only thing he was really stiff on. So when I say or think professional wrestler that I was in the ring with, he was probably the greatest. And if I go with someone that's just really hard, the TV guys, the guys that make it up top, 95% of them, there's a couple that don't fall under this umbrella, but they're so freaking good, Jay. You can dislike the person or not get along with the person, but when you get in the ring, it's just different. You guys are working, and you can take a guy that you don't get along with, but go out and have a great match. And so never on TV to have somebody that just like, oh, I can't work with him. Oh, he's terrible. Oh, he's hard to work with. But now on the independent scene, there are lots of guys there who have not been trained properly or know what they're doing or understand psychology and are just not athletic. And so that list is a mile long. But, as far as TV guys, they're professional wrestlers, nobody was hard to work. If in my mind was hard to work with me, hard to work with. And one of the guys, this would not seem to fit, but Van Hammer, who was Hammer in the Flock, he and I had several matches together. And Mark is 6'7", almost 6'8", and I'm 5'10" on a good day. You wouldn't think guys with that size differential would really gel together well, but I always had good matches with Hammer, and he's not known for being one of the greatest wrestlers in the business. So people are going to hear that and they're like, "Oh my gosh, he thinks Hammer's good. He doesn't know what I'm talking about." So
it's probably that you're just that good.
Well,
I've heard a lot of people in interviews call him a real crowbar in the ring. So
call Hammer a crowbar?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, not you. I mean, but yeah, they said he wasn't a bad guy. He was just tough to move around sometimes, was what they said. So.
And you know what? I just finished with a kid tonight who started in January, and I was in the ring rolling around with him before I broke off to come do the interview. And the last thing I said to him before I left, I said, "Kid, you are a whole lot easier to move these." He's 230 pounds and strong as an ox. And when you're green and don't understand how to move with somebody or dance with somebody, it's tough to move a 230-pound man who's strong and doesn't know what he's doing. He's not going to go with you. And you got me who's used to, if I lean a certain way, my guy's going to go that way. If I push a certain way, he's going to go that way. But people who don't know that, especially in the beginning, when they're really green, they're hard to move around. So I get that about what you're saying.
So Jay would be tough to move around because he's a big guy, he's strong, and he's from Nebraska, so
he's strong. The thing about our business is it's so counterintuitive to what wrestlers do, and that's why I think it's a hard crossover for guys who are used to, not giving the other guy leverage or giving your body to someone else and letting them do things to you that you don't fight back on or tense up on. Again, that's a skill, and it's hard for some of those guys to switch over and tone it down to a level where somebody would say they're a great worker. But look at Kurt Angle, look at Brock Lesnar. Those guys did it. Shamrock struggled with it some, and there's a slew of guys who tried to make the crossover and just quit because it was tough for them to do. So, Jay, as strong as he is and as big as he is, until he learned to dance with me, yeah, he might be hard to move around the first couple of times. It's just not natural.
No, it's not.
It's not. And that's the thing, you got to kind of turn your brain off. And I tell kids when I walk in the door, I'm like, do me a favor and check your ego at the door. This isn't about being tough. You and I are dancing, and we're going to put on a great show. We're going to entertain those fans and give them their money's worth. And they paid to see good versus evil, and hopefully the good wins more than the bad. But that's the whole storyline behind what we do, and get them emotionally involved. Pistol Pez Watley was a great wrestler. He was in the Mid-Atlantic and NWA. You remember Pistol Pez, right?
Oh, yeah.
Pez is one of the few guys in the world I know that could drop kick a man, and he was about 230, maybe 5'11", 6 foot tall, big barrel chest. He could drop kick a man in the face and land on his feet.
Jeez.
It was a great athletic move, and I've had guys for years, hey, can you teach me how to? I'm like, I don't know anybody can do it but Pez, and Pez, rest his soul, is dead, but he was great at it, and so.
And it's funny because he was a great amateur at UTC at the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga, and a lot of those guys have a hard time doing that stuff. If you guys ever get a chance, look at some of his stuff from ICW, the Pafos old territory that was kind of an outlaw. Pez just sit there and was head and shoulders above a lot of them, besides like I think Lanny Poffo was the only one that could kind of keep up with him and stuff.
Yeah.
But it was amazing because that dude was just a brick. He could pop with those legs. It was Coco Beware were the two that I'd seen could just pop up like nobody.
Right. And quick story about Pez that I always remember is when I went to WCW's Power Plant, which is their training school. And as you started to get a little better, Pez was one of the trainers there, but he never got in the ring. We had Buddy Lee Parker, Sarge, to teach us how to do the moves. Pez focused more on the psychology and tell us where to put things and how to get it there. And one of the things he taught me that I will forever cherish and love, and I love being able to do this because with performing, Pez told us, he goes, when you're great at what you do, you're like a conductor. I can make those people stand up when I want them to, and I can bring them right back down to their seats when I want to. And when you've got that kind of ability, that's a really cool feeling to go out and, know. And some people hear that story and they're like, you're manipulating people's feelings. That's terrible. I'm like, they're paying to see wrestling. That's what I'm supposed to do. They want to cheer and they want to boo, And to go one more thing far with that is, as far as that's our job, I detest, hate, abhor a guy walking back through the curtain and he says, crowd's dead tonight. They're not into it. They paid their money to get in. They wanted to see wrestling. And I'll tell people this in a heartbeat. If they didn't get involved in your match or you think they're dead, there's something you didn't do they wanted to see. The marquee says wrestling. Maybe you went out and did 14 flips. But did you wrestle? Did you give them a story? Or was it just two guys going at it for the sake of, we're going to wrestle till one wins? And that's boring. And nobody likes that. So it's on the entertainer and the wrestler. I don't buy this, it's a dead crowd. The house is dead. No, nobody's going to make any noise tonight. It's my job to get them up out of their seats.
Well, one thing that I've always wondered, and I've always heard this, like when guys like Scott Steiner or Rick Steiner or whatever would grab a hold of somebody, there was always people that would say it was like you were being grabbed by like a being from another planet. They didn't realize how strong they were. Was that any of your experiences with?
I love Rick and Scott dearly. I've worked with him multiple times, and they know how strong they are. That wasn't an act. They know they were legit, wrestlers in college and great at it. And they were always good with me. I had a Lenny Lane story. We were wrestling the Steiners one night and somewhere up in Northern Virginia. It was a 3-way with the Midnight Express.
Jeez.
Wow.
Midnight Express, yeah. And the Steiners and Lenny and Lodi in a cage. And the promoter had this great idea in his mind. Oh, we'll use a real padlock. I'll put the key in it. We'll lock you in there. Well, Midnight came to us. They said, hey, we're going to get in there. Boom, boom, boom. 30 seconds. Trip us up, cheap. We're going to cover me. We're getting out. You and the Steiners can do the work. Said, okay, that's cool. Rick and Scott obviously are brothers. And when they're happy with each other, they love each other like brothers. When they're angry with each other, they fight like brothers. And that's not something you want to get in the middle of. So we know Midnight Express is going to be out 30 seconds into this match. So Lenny and I go in search of Scott and Rick Steiner to talk to them about, hey, guys, what are we going to do tonight? So we found out Rick was in one locker room down at the end of the one hall, and Scott was in one, Rick was in the far other. So we go to see Rick first because he's a little more calm than Scott. Well, hey, Rick, it's us tonight in a cage. And he used a derogatory slur, I think, of some kind. He's like, what do you two guys want? Well, just ask him what we're going to do in the ring. We're kind of getting an idea of how we're going to lay this out. I go ask my brother. Okay. Walk down the other end of the hall, walk in. Scott's doing his push-ups, and he's gassed to the gills, and he's jacked. He looks like $1 million. And we walk in. He's like, exact same terminology his brother used, mind you. What do you two guys want? Just asking what, we want to do tonight when we get in the ring. We're the main event. You got an idea? Go ask my brother. Great. We have no answers. We go to the ring. We're obviously the heels. Midnight comes to the ring. Scott and Rick come out, big baby faces. You never know they're not getting along. Everybody's clapping and cheering for them. We get in. We beat Midnight Express in 30 seconds like we laid it out. Promoter locks us back in the cage. We have no idea what we're doing. No, we're going to call the whole thing in the ring. And they're in the corner, right? You got Rick and Scott Steiner staring you down in a cage. And Lenny leans into me, and we're staring them down from the other corner. Lenny leans into me and goes, hey, you know something? We're locked in with them. If they wanted to, they could legit kill us, and nobody's going to save us.
I love the reassurance there, huh?
I think my answer was like, I know.
That's fantastic.
Think about Lex Luger and climbing out right then.
Yeah, the Bruiser Brody match, right? And
Right.
If you guys have never seen Lex Luger and Bruiser Brody in Florida, go pull that one up on YouTube. It's a heck of a thing once Brody stops selling and Lex gets scared. It ended quick. Jay, do you know this story?
No, I don't know this story.
Oh, that's awesome, dude.
Was Lex leaving Florida to go to Mid-Atlantic or NWA at the time?
He was getting ready. I think he was about a month away from it. He was doing his jobs on the way out. But the one thing I had heard was Brody got ticked off, and he told Alfonso to tell him you better get out of the cage, because if not. And Bill Alfonso, the referee, goes over there, tells him, and Luger's like, oh, crap, okay. Just climbs over and gets out and goes to the back.
Hey, right in the middle of the match. Lex he just leaves.
Wasn't it supposed to go like another 12 minutes or something?
It wasn't like the WWE show where when you get out of the cage, you win. The cage was to keep everybody else out. Lex climbs out of the cage to get away from Brody. And, it's a great thing to watch because about, 2 or 3 minutes before he climbs out, Lex is punching him in the face, and Brody's just looking at him. Lex is hitting him again. Brody's just staring at him. He won't sell anything, Jay. So at this point, I think Lex knows I'm in trouble because, trust me, at his height, no matter how great he looked or how strong he was, he couldn't fight his way out of a paper bag. That's just the truth. Looked like $1 million, but he was not a fighter. I love him to death. He turned to a great friend after we both got off TV and got out of wrestling, and he is absolutely in a wheelchair now and devoted his whole life to the Lord, and he's just amazing to sit down and speak with these days. But he climbs out of the ring, Jay, just leaves. we actually ended up having a great match with the Steiners. We just tagged it. We did our match. They caught it in the ring, and we both took a double finish. And I think Lenny got the Steiner recliner, and Rick hit me with a bulldog off the top. We got pinned at the same time, 1, 2, 3, and easy night of work. But there was some stress going on, and neither one of them talked. You know, like, oh, this is not going to be good.
Oh God,
That's awesome. That is awesome. Oh my God. Funniest story that you've ever had, that you were almost laughing so hard while you were in the ring that it was just so hilarious that you remember.
With my character of Lodi being somewhat of a goof, I've molded that some as I've gotten older and put a little more brat into it and a little tougher guy. But I can really, for instance, Raven had this serious character who never broke character, never smiled, whatever. And so you got to know that as wrestlers, we constantly rib each other to try to get the other guy to break character in a match. That's how we pass our time to do something fun. Let's see if we can make Raven laugh, or let's see if we can make somebody else laugh. Funniest thing ever. Wow.
Where you just walked away from the ring and you were just laughing because it was just what happened in the ring was just so funny.
Whew. They got a couple of them. The fact we lived through the Steiners, that's pretty funny. That was one. Those cats. Whew. I was in a battle royal one night, and trying to think. I got a couple of them. Trying to come up with the best ones. When you see a big battle royal, nobody likes doing battle royals because you're gonna get hurt. There's too many guys in the ring.
Yeah, it's forearm is what I've always heard.
And the young kids think they can plan spots to run while these other guys are in there. And one of my good friends, John Schuyler, has been doing some work for AEW recently. Helped work with him when he first started training. I've known him for 11 years. He actually used to come watch me wrestle when he was still in college. He would take breaks, come in and watch me in Orangeburg, South Carolina. And he's about 200 pounds or whatever. So one night in a battle royal, again, you're trying to get people to break character. I went over and not meaning to. Schuyler was not supposed to go out yet, but I kind of got underneath him and gave him a forearm. And I backdropped him out of the ring. And I turned around, and he's on the floor. He's like, Odie, what did you do? I was supposed to go. He was supposed to be till later, and I dumped him out early. He's like, you don't know your own strength, man. What are you doing to me? And, so, man, there are so many things. Kidman and I, one of the things we got to do when Nitro was live and we were sitting out in the crowd, when we would go to commercial break, Kib and I would get up in the ring. I'd take my signs, we'd pick on people, give them a hard time. We were in El Paso, Texas. And I think it was the first commercial break. I slide into the ring. The TV's off, of course, there at commercial. I pop up a sign that says, where's your green card? In El Paso, Texas.
Wow.
And that's not really a good thing to say in El Paso, Texas. They started throwing things at us. And bottles, cans, it was not good. Doug Dillinger pulled us out of there. He goes, guys, stop before you get killed. Lenny and I had a couple episodes like that. We did the Juggalo Fest for the Insane Clown Posse.
Oh, Jesus, the Gathering of the Juggalos.
Oh God.
I've been to one of those. It's just, it's like nothing you've ever seen before.
That's the best way to describe it. We were out there at the Juggalo Fest, and the first night we were in the main event, and it was Lenny and I with Disco Inferno.
Jeez.
We were the threesomes in the 3-man, 6-man deal in the main event against Sabu and the Insane Clown Posse.
Of course. It's their show. They're the main event.
Realize how much those fans were hating us. Funny story about that. I had just had my neck surgery in 2002, about 3 months earlier, and was still in a full neck brace. And I told the clowns I booked it, and they're like, guys, I can't come. I had neck surgery. They're like, no, Lodi, just come. You don't have to get in the ring. So they paid me for 3 days of being there, doing 3 matches. And basically, I slid in the ring and kicked the guy when he's down and tagged back out. But I did it in a neck brace. And for them throwing, cans of Faygo and
car batteries.
last one that is absolutely hilarious and probably could have turned dangerous. Dublin, Ireland. We're in an arena, 10,000 strong. Place is sold out. And Lenny wants to cut a promo about Dublin, Ireland. And he said, basically, we got an email this morning that the leader of the world's greatest band wants to be a member of our fan club. That's right. Bono is homo.
Oh,
God.
Wow.
Oh, no.
I barely get my head turned to the side and like, did you just say that? Before I can, here come these bottles, Jay, like long bottles, the whole place. And we start to dodge them. We realize they're plastic. At first we thought they were real bottles. They were at least plastic. But Lenny's standing there with a microphone, and somewhere way back, and this is on video somewhere, a fan threw a gumball. Just unchewed, just a round gumball. And for whatever reason, way back, it caught Lenny and I's attention. And we're standing there and we see it coming. And we're watching it. And for a true story, we're watching it, just staring at it. It comes down. It hits Lenny right in the forehead. He got a bum. We're like, he got nailed from like 30 rows back with a gumball. And I'm like, bro, this is not good, we got the Sturgis bike rally. We always had Road Wild was the name of the
Yes.
And we got the ring set up outside. Again, if you've been to a Juggalo Fest, that's one thing. Bike Week at Sturgis is a whole nother thing.
Oh.
Very similar, and just you can't describe it. You got to see it to believe it. And I came to the ring with Raven. I think he was in a three-way match with maybe Kenya and Saturn. But anyway, come out like 20,000 bikers, on their bikes, girls, mean biker dudes. And I pull out a sign that said, biker chicks are fat and ugly.
Oh, I bet that went over well.
It did. A lead balloon, that one was. Same security guy. Can I take that sign? You're going to get us all killed. And I'm like, okay. That was our job, He's like, listen, we got 20,000 bikers here. I might be able to hold off one or two of them, but never will I be able to hold off the rest. Last story, I got to share one more with you. I'm at a pay-per-view in Las Vegas at the MGM Grand. I had stayed out way too late the night before and was not scheduled to even be on the show. Go down, we're staying at the MGM Grand. That's where the show is. We go down. I realize Raven's in a match with Jericho. I'm like, Raven, let me go to the ring with you. He goes, kid, you look terrible. He and I had stayed out way late the night before, till the morning, obviously. And I'm like, really? I can go? And he's like, yeah, man, just get out of here and go get some rest. I'm like, cool. So I grab my bag, and I'm walking out. I'm right at the exit door to leave the arena part and go back into the hotel. And Perry Saturn goes, Lodi, stop. I turn around. He's got a cup of coffee in his hand and a couple of ephedrine tablets. I'm like, what, bro? He said, Eddie missed his flight, Guerrero. He goes, Bischoff says the only person here I have any heat with is you. We've got a match in 15 minutes.
Oh, jeez.
Coffee, ephedrine, get up, go out to the match. I carry my signs to the ring. Get in the ring, lay my signs down on the apron, and they have the ring girls at different cities take our gear back to the back for us. We take off our hat, our shirt, ring jacket, whatever it may be. I'm wrestling Perry Saturn. This is October of '98. If you want to go pull it up and just see it for fun. Beating on Perry, I look. The ring girl picks up my signs and leaves with them. She's walking back down the aisle with my signs, and truly, I had not recovered from the night before. I was still a little messed up. And she's walking away, and I realize Perry and I have a spot later in the match where I'm going to use my signs, and he's going to punch me when I turn around. I slid out of the ring and ran all the way to the back to catch this girl. Live pay-per-view. I just stopped wrestling, roll under the bottom under the rope, and run to the back. She's all the way back to the pumpkin. It's Halloween Havoc.
Oh, yeah, it's Halloween Havoc. You're at the MGM Grand in Vegas, October, yeah.
So the camera guy runs with me, and he's got me sprinting down the deal. I get up to the girl. The camera's right there. I'm like, you must be new here. I grab them out of her hands. I'm like, I can't work without these. What are you doing? Go back and finish the match. Come out, get back. Terry Taylor pulls me in the war room. He said, Lodi, I got to have a talk with you. Whose idea was it to run after the lady with the signs? I don't really have a good answer. And he looks at me without me saying a word. He goes, "That was unplanned, wasn't it?" I'm like, he said, "Man, I brought you in here because it was the best spot of the night. Keep doing it." It's the most asinine thing when you know that story and you watch it. I totally stopped the match and just run after this lady for no reason to the fans, but we made it work, and so I truly could talk you guys' ear off with a funny story.
That's awesome.
Oh, I'm loving it.
Well, as we wrap up here, I want to, John, do you have one final question for Lodi before we wrap up?
Yes, I do, and it's a real simple one. What is one of the funniest encounters you had with a fan? We had a match, me and a friend did, and the referee's mom was just the biggest piece of white trash you've ever seen in your life, and she'd just be out there cussing and throwing stuff. And I finally looked at the ref and my tag team partner. I go, "Watch this." So I get in there and I'm like, beating on the baby face, and she's going, "Rah, rah, rah," and I looked over and I go, "Mom, will you please be quiet? You're embarrassing me." Next thing you know, I've got 45 people in the crowd turned around, turning on this poor lady all of a sudden. They're just like, "That's your boy?" Like that. I was like, "Mom, I said quit it." What was the funniest thing you ever had encounter-wise?
With a fan?
Yeah, I mean, not like, you got into it like face-to-face or something, but like you're in the ring and some guy's doing something and you have fun, you single out one guy out and you're like,
We've done that so many times. Man, I don't know that I can, especially when I was a heel. That was my job on an, especially an indie show. You go find the biggest fan you can in the front row and, make fun of her for not having teeth or, whatever the case may be. One of the funniest fan stories I did have, and Jay will understand this more than you guys maybe. I was living in Carolina Beach at the time and had just gotten there. And Carolina Beach was nowhere near as crowded as it is now. It was a little more of a quiet place, and I loved being there. I've been there for about 2 weeks, and I got a knock on my door at home. I go to the door, and it's a guy wearing a wrestling shirt. And I open the door. I'm like, "Can I help you?" He said, "Yep. I heard you lived here. You're Lodi." "Yes, I am." He's like, "All right, have a good one." And he turned around and walked off. That was it. That was the whole interaction. He comes to my house, and once I was there for about a year, the newness kind of wore off. But the first year, Jay, I couldn't pay for a meal at the deck house if I wanted to.
Yeah.
It was one of my favorite places to go, and they're always like, "Hey, we got your meal. Don't worry about it." I'm like, man. I go back there now sometimes like, "You guys remember when you used to comp my meal?" I'm just, "Hey, I want to still do that." And they're like,
well, there's a story that got on Twitter a few months ago of a fan who had like a wrestling figure or a belt or whatever, and he found Arn Anderson's address and showed up to his house and made him sign it. And it's like 3:00 in the afternoon, and Arn's just woke up from a nap, and he's like, "What?" Nobody else was home, and he signed this dude's belt or whatever. So
I totally believe it. Absolutely.
Well, I want to start with Jay. Before we let everybody go, run it down for us, my friend. How do we find your show? And
Right. Yeah, the show's called A New Direction. We interview best-selling authors from all over the world. We try to help people become more successful in life and career and business. It's a very positive show. We are on every major podcast platform out there, including iHeartRadio and iTunes, of course, Spotify, you name it. We're over 200, and we're also available on Alexa. So I have a number of people who are blind who actually tune into the show, and they use the Alexa to listen to the show. So you can just say, "Hey, Alexa, play the podcast A New Direction with Jay Izzo," and it'll play the latest show. And that's why you can find me at jayizzo.com, JAYIZSO.com. I'm available on all the social media. You can find me, there's the Internet Doctor or Jay Izzo. You can find me there as well. I do want to give a shout out. I always talk about the hat and the shirt. Folks, the hat and shirt is All Secure Foundation, and it is a It is one of my favorite. It's a foundation that my wife and I support financially, and I support vocally. And basically, it's for our veterans who struggle with PTS. I will not use the D because it's not a disorder. It is post-traumatic stress, and these are our combat veterans, and they do everything from helping them with alcoholism, drug addiction, to helping them find jobs, getting them counseling, and they do just such a great work. Tom Satterley was part of Black Hawk Down. He was a Delta Force guy and spent 18 hours in a firefight in Mogadishu during that time, and he's put this whole foundation together. And so I just really encourage you, if you will, please check out allsecurefoundation.org because it's a fabulous foundation, and it's really helping a lot of our men and women, veterans who struggle. And I'm really proud to be a supporter of that.
Fantastic. Now, Lodi.
Jay, I didn't know that stuff. Thank you for sharing that. I'll look into that. That's awesome.
Now, Lodi, you've got a wrestling school, a ministry. Run it down for us, my friend, and get the plugs in there.
We have a wrestling school here in Charlotte called Team Fearless Training Academy, and you can find information online at my gym's website called yourflexappeal.com. All of my social media, Brad Lodi Kane is there, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and you get in touch with that way. But yeah, the number one thing in my life now is I really want to make sure I do an even better job with what's left of my life as spreading the gospel, because if it wasn't for Jesus, I wouldn't be here. And I'm so thankful and blessed. The stories I get to share with you guys and the things I've been able to do, 99% of the world can never experience that. And so many nights I go to a wrestling show, and you always, for whatever reason, it brings them there, small or large, there's always somebody there sitting in a wheelchair. That not for any reason, for an accident, they're just never going to walk again, maybe never walked. And I try to let that be a reminder for me. Like I told you guys, I rolled out of the ring from wrestling practice and ran home to this. At almost 50 years of age, God gives me the ability to still get in the ring. And there are people who can never do it once. And so I try to take full advantage of that and be thankful for it every time I get a chance to, because I've lived a blessed life.
Well, I'll tell you, the story you told us earlier about you guys being locked in a cage with the Steiners, you definitely had Jesus on your side that night, sir.
Yes.
Oh, I've got some crazy stories of those guys. Maybe I'll try that some.
There's all these people, and there's this big movement on the internet about God isn't real and all this stuff. Be locked in the cage with Scott and Rick Steiner, and you will realize God is real.
You're gonna pray, yes.
Fast. We start praying, yeah.
Well, this has been fun. We definitely have to do this again. Jay, thanks for setting this up, brother.
Well, no, Brad, thanks, man. I appreciate you so much. I am very grateful that you were willing to do this. So thanks, brother. I appreciate it a lot.
Anytime. Thank you, Jay. Appreciate it.
And once again, Jay Izzo wins the best Skype background award for the evening. You always have the cool office.
The best everything.
He's got the best everything. Lodi's got a pretty cool picture on the wall there behind you, Lodi. But nothing beats that office at Jay's in.
Yeah, it does. The picture's the 13th at Masters at Augusta. Yeah. Big fan.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Do you play much?
I don't play as much anymore. I get invited to a couple of celebrity deals here and there that I get to do, but I just don't have the time to go out and play 18 holes now, but I love the game. Played a lot when I was younger. Love to watch those guys on TV because they're amazing with what they can do. Yeah.
We'll have to get out. We'll have to get out and play and hack around the course a little bit.
Oh, let me brush up on my game a little bit, and I would love to. That would be great.
Dude, you don't have to brush up on your game with me. You'll be just fine.
If you guys come to Kansas, I'll drive the cart for you to get the beer and stuff, because I can't really help to save my life. So it'd be cool to hang out with you guys.
We'll get our money's worth many times as we swing, right?
Dude, I have 2 boxes of balls with me, brand new, in my bag at all times, and then I might have to get another box at the turn.
Yeah, I know the feeling.
Well, good night, gentlemen. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate you, brother.
And there they go. John Mosier, of course, the fantastic Jay Izzo, and Lodi. Hell of a deal tonight. So that wraps it up here for